Today, I would like to welcome our guest, DeAndrea Joyner, who shares with us an amazing story of faith in the middle of a whirlwind and life-changing transition. So instead of me telling you about a story, we're going to jump right in and let DeAndrea kind of tell us a little bit about the day that changed her life in such an incredible way.
So I won't go into great detail, but I had gone to the grocery store, and at the time, all 4 of my children were home. Well, 3 were home. 1 was on her way home from work. And I remember coming home just like normal from the grocery store, calling my son saying, hey, come and get the groceries out the car. And he didn't answer the phone. I called my daughter, like, hey, no one was answering the phone. And then I remember my daughter, so I get out the car because I'm not about to take groceries in the house. I'm just not about to do it.
And she got a pink on her nails, so you know she's a lady. She's not carrying that.
So I called my daughter again as I was getting out the car, and my oldest daughter actually was pulling up. And she ran up to me and she was like, Mom, there's men in black all along the railing of the apartment complex. And I was like, girl, what are you talking about? Like, there's nobody out here. Like, I drove all the way in the apartment complex. There's nobody here. So she and I got ready to walk up the stairs. And as we walked up the stairs, we see, like, officers everywhere. The ones in uniform, the ones in all black uniform, just everywhere. And it reminded me of something from TV. And I was like, am I being punked right now? Like, what is going on? And so she's like walking behind me. And if you know my kids, my daughter is taller than I am. And I'm like, what am I going to do? You know, so she's walking behind me. And the police
officer shoot you first.
Right. So as we approach the stairs, the police officer is like, get away from here. Get away. Go back to your car. Get away from here. They're just telling me to get away from here. Move back. And I was trying to explain to them, like, you got to understand, I have 3 other children in that apartment upstairs. And they kept saying, no, go back to your car, go back to your car. And so as I got ready to walk back to my car, an officer came up to me and he was like, where do you live? And I said, I'm at the apartment on the corner. He said, well, the apartment next to you, we're having a standoff with your neighbor. And I'm like, okay. And my other 3 kids are in the apartment. Either we got to get them out or I'm going in. Like, it's just one or the other. So they told me to follow me and my daughter, my oldest daughter, to follow them up the stairs. And as I followed them up the stairs, there were police everywhere. I'm talking about lining the whole entire stairs. There was probably about 12 officers with,
the big guns.
The big guns drawn at the door to my next door neighbor. And the way the apartment is set up, once you go up the stairs, I'm off on the corner. You have to come around the corner, and then there's the other line of apartments. And it was the first apartment from that corner. So as we go upstairs, they like rush me in. And as soon as we get into my apartment, my kids are panicking. And I'm telling them they had no idea what was going on. My youngest son at the time was in my bedroom, in my bed on his iPad. And at the time, that bedroom main wall is the same connecting wall that's to my neighbor's front door, which where they were having a standoff. And so at the time, I kind of was like, y'all come in the living room. And we heard gunshots, and at that point I knew, like, and that was the start of a very long night and things that just changed the trajectory of our life at the time.
Wow. So and I don't want to ruin it for the people to actually, and you can read more detail in the actual article, but what ended up happening was they tear gas your neighbor, or at least that was the plan.
Yeah. So the plan was for them to try to get him out. Hours later, they were still trying to get him out the apartment. And so I remember them coming down to the office where everyone was and just asking which windows are allocated to which apartments. 4202, 4204, 4206. And I was 4202. And they put X's on a floor plan, if you will, for the windows that allocated to his apartment. And so shortly thereafter, we heard the fires of tear gas being fired off.
What does that sound like?
A big bomb. If you've never heard a bomb in person, that's just what it sounds like. You just heard this big boom, and there were several rounds of it. And so that was an attempt to get him out of the apartment. And they came back a little bit later and said that didn't work, yada yada yada. We still didn't know at the time, and so We found out the next day when I actually tried to go back in, they made a mistake. They actually fired tear gas in all 3 apartments, 4202, 4204, and 4206, and he was the one in the middle. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? Because my kids got to go to school tomorrow. I need to get their uniforms, and can I just go in and get the stuff? And I was like, no, you don't understand. Everything in your apartment is a total loss. Oh, what? My clothes, my shoes, my food, my everything.
And she's bougie, y'all. So you can imagine.
I am not bougie.
You can imagine her level of clothes.
I am not. But that's the first thing I thought. All of my clothes, all of my shoes, all of my purses, like my kids' softball uniforms, cheerleading uniforms, baseball uniforms, like everything. They was like, anything that's porous is gone. So
not only can you not, so everything in the apartment is destroyed.
Pretty much.
And it took, I know in the article you talk about how it took you a couple of days going back and saying, what exactly does that mean? But y'all couldn't even live in there.
No, we couldn't even go in. It took at least 2 weeks before I was even able to go in and get my purse with my ID. Because the only thing I had when I went to the grocery store, I just had on a coat and I had my ID and my debit card. But my entire purse was in the house.
Wow. Just like that.
Just
like that, y'all are completely homeless. Y'all are completely without. And I remember you saying in the article, you talk about how all your kids had were the shoes on their feet and house,
they had on, because imagine, they're in the house lunging around watching I think it was the NBA finals or something they were like the All-Star game. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. They were watching the All-Star game. So they literally like in gym shorts, t-shirts, and they threw on a coat and some flip-flops to go down just to get us out the apartment. So
wow,
that was it.
So what was the conversation to your children at this time? Because you're looking at them, because the first night, after the first night, I remember you mentioned in the article that that you guys were put up in a hotel, mm-hmm. and you're in a state of, okay, I cannot believe we just had a straight up scene from Bad Boys. Like it is.
I wouldn't say Bad Boys. It was like a war scene because it was like everybody everywhere, like on those war movies where you would see like guns and police trucks, not the cars, the trucks.
Wow.
With the armored men and all of that.
And so you go into you go to the hotel room. What type of thing, what are your kids doing at this time, and what type of conversation are you having with them?
By this time, they're kids, they're sleepy, so they just wanted to go to sleep. So we literally went to Walmart and got toothbrushes, toothpaste, and just like the necessities that we needed to wake up the next morning. Because
you're thinking the next day, we're going home.
Exactly.
It's something for the books.
Exactly.
We can just tell them.
We'll just be back home tomorrow. But for now, we just got to get some stuff for the night.
Just to find out the next day, no, you can't come in right now, or you can't come in. Your stuff is destroyed. And I recall you saying in the article, you were talking about in the article how you kept going back saying, I don't have a real understanding of, explain it to me again.
Help me. I kept saying, help me, help you, help us. So what do you mean by 83% of the contents of my apartment is a total loss? What does that mean? I just need to go in and get their backpacks because they go back to school tomorrow because that Monday was President's Day. So I was like, we got to they wear uniforms with, not uniforms from the local Walmart or Target, the uniforms with the crest on the shirt. So we can't just go to school tomorrow. What do you mean? And so it took a minute for me to understand it before I could even explain it. How do you explain something that you don't even understand fully? You can't go to baseball practice tomorrow because we got to find you some cleats and another bat, and we just got to find all this stuff all over again.
And at this particular time, you are in the process of building your first home. You purchased your first home, and it's being built.
Exactly.
You are like a month or two away from moving into a brand new built home, and you were buying things in preparation for the move to furnish this 4-bedroom home, and you were all the money that you had because you're a single mother, and the money that you had was for your moving costs. So it's not like we got an excess amount of surplus just sitting there.
So I was 4 weeks away from closing, and in the living room, I literally had boxes labeled where the things that I bought. This is for this is for that in my apartment. And so at the time when this happened, I told my lender, I was like, listen, I don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, but I just lost everything. And so I have everything that I need to close on the house, but that's all I have. So at this very moment, let's postpone this closing till I can figure my life out. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. And to kind of give you some perspective, I was already in a battle in my own mind on, like, when I close on the house, I'm not going to exhaust all of my resources with buying everything new. Like, what am I going to take that's existing? What do I need to buy new? And, you know, just to kind of strategize in my own mind. So the strategy that I came up with was, well, I'll buy all new appliances and take all of the current furniture that I have, and then I'll just redo as I go. Not really knowing that God had something totally different in mind.
We waking up one day and we're about to change stuff. We're about to change everything. We're about to change everything.
His plan was so much bigger than mine, and I thought I was coming up with just the best strategy. I don't want to charge up no cards. I don't want to use all my resources. So it definitely changed my perspective as in how I plan and when I plan. And my timing is definitely not his time.
Yes.
And so it was a great teacher, and it changed, like I said before, it changed the trajectory of how I plan and what I do and how I move.
So let's move into it, because what happened, you've lost everything. You've gotten to the understanding that, there's no going back into your house and getting your stuff. You and your children are homeless. And y'all literally stayed in a hotel, I believe I recall you saying, for about over a month. But at the same time, and in everybody's mind right now, everybody's just like, well, she could just call the insurance company and they'll just replace everything. And which you did. You called the insurance company. But what did the insurance company tell you?
So in my renter's insurance policy, there's a clause in there that we don't know about. So you get renter's insurance because you want the contents of your property on the inside of your apartment to be insured, right? So I called the insurance company, and they told me, I'm sorry to tell you this, but tear gas is not a covered entity in your policy. Tear gas is only covered in homeowners' policies. It does not cover your contents on a renter's insurance policy.
Okay, we're gonna set aside how that's even possible. Like, how can we possibly know
how
that I'm gonna be tear gas?
Right.
So I need to go get some extra.
So I told the lady, I was like, listen, and I kept debating with her, like, no, you don't understand. And she's like, no, you don't understand. I was like, okay, listen. I heard exactly what you said, but I have 4 children and I have everything that was in my apartment. That's all we had, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but something's gonna happen. And that was early on that Tuesday morning. It was like at 9:00 in the morning. And by 8:00, and I remember after, so I had the conversation, dropped my kids off at school, talked to the school about what was happening. They let them just come in with, a regular red shirt and blue pants or whatever.
Because y'all had to go, and you had to go get all of this. Your family is scrambling, trying to make things happen, and all this different type of stuff.
Right. So after I dropped them off, I remember pulling over on the side of the road, and I called my mom, and I was like, listen, this is what the insurance company said. And I was like, and at this point, I really don't know what to do. And to be honest, like you keep saying homeless, I never thought about it. I never gave us that title. I was just kind of, I didn't even say displaced, homeless. I never even thought that. I was just like, something has got to give. I don't know how it's going to give. I don't know when it's going to give. But everything that I see, like, I know it's got to be better than this. And so I remember calling my mom, and my mom was like, and I told her, I said, Mom, they said that they're not going to cover anything in my apartment because tear gas is not covered in a renter's insurance policy. And she was like, okay. She said, okay. She said, I'll call you later and we're going to pray. And I said, okay. And I remember going back to the hotel, and I literally sat there and I cried for hours.
Really?
Called the apartment complex again, and I was like, I'll be up there because I need to understand what you're saying. Like, again.
And at one point, they told you need to go to the Waxahachie police, the police chief.
They did. They told me to go to my city's officials and let them know so that they could take it on. And so I did that, and still there was the longest time there was no traction at all.
Really?
No. It was like it was an accident that it happens. You need to contact your renter's insurance and the rent. So they kind of did this ping pong thing for a while. Yeah, and so. Later that evening, I remember after picking my kids up, getting them something to eat, getting them settled in the hotel, I literally went on the outside of the hotel door and I just cried because I didn't want them to see me that way. Because even though they were displaced, they thought they were like, oh, we're living in a hotel. They were not down at all. It was fun for them because they didn't miss a need. There was not anything. They didn't know that they were in lack. They had food. Everybody was calling saying what they need, They, Jonathan thought it was good because, I ain't gotta go to softball practice. I really don't want to do that anyway. My parents are just making me do it because I started it and they're gonna make me finish what I started. So for them, they didn't experience lack. They didn't know that they were in lack. And so I went outside of that hotel room and I remember looking down at my phone and I just cried and it was like after 8 o'clock I get a call. And it was from an unknown number. And I answered the phone, and it was a lady from the insurance company. And she said, hi, I was just giving you a call to follow up on your claim. And I was like, okay. At this point, I'm just kind of like, well, whatever. And she said, I'm just giving you a call to let you know that I was able to speak to some people, and there's a way that I can work this claim out for you. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, we're going to pay your claim out. I found some verbiage that I can use basically to get this claim paid, and I thought to myself, baby, you didn't find no word or no verbiage.
The Lord found that for me.
It was a God thing. It was a God thing because when she told me that it was not covered because of homeowners versus renters insurance, she sent it to me. It's clearly there. It was in fine print, but it was clearly there. It's not like it was something that wasn't there. So when she said we found a way to pay the claim, and I was like, okay, I receive all of that. And so she just went to outlining how the money would be dispersed and how they would make sure that everything was taken care of. And in that very moment, I felt a sigh of victory, but at the same time, the next day you wake up and you still have nothing. You still have, like, girls, me and 2 other girls with no undergarments, no socks, no shoes, you don't have those things. And so you think, this is a victory. I'm going to get X amount of dollars and I can just go shop. Which, I can go. I love to shop. But at that moment, that's not what I want. I don't want to have to go and re-up on everything for everybody. Mm-hmm. So that's taking on a whole new job. So, but that was the first victory to many, many, many more.
Because that was just the first step in a long process, because as I said, y'all were in this hotel for over a month, and that's one of my questions, because what it is that you talk about so much in your article is you talk about faith. Mm-hmm. And you made a statement. You said nobody can prepare you for when you lose everything. Mm-hmm. There is people will say things, but there is nothing that prepares you for losing everything. Yeah. And you begin to talk about your faith even in those first moments. Mm-hmm. and those first hours.
She told me before we got off the phone, and I cried and I said, Mama, I don't know, yada yada yada. And she said, Didi, before this is over, you are going to count $100 bills like they're ones.
Ooh.
And I said, where you get that from? Oh, but you know what? I accepted it. Yeah. And it was not even 2 weeks later, and I experienced it. I would come into contact with people who heard about it, whatever the case may be, and would just hand me $600, hand me $300, hand me and it was like so much so that I was like, no, you don't have to do that. You don't understand. The insurance is paid. Da 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 da. I don't want to. But it was so profound to me, and it's not about the fishes and the loaves. It's not that,
because you say that all the time. I don't serve them.
I don't serve. But I found it to be true. It wasn't about the things. It wasn't about the material things that I got and the money. It was about the principle. Mm-hmm. And the principle behind it all was I had to activate a faith in something that I did not even see. I had to believe in something and believe that something was going to turn out different than what I already seen. And I didn't see it. I literally was in a hotel with nothing. So to experience that, it changed the way I faith. It changed. I had to faith it. And I literally started saying that, oh, I don't even see how this is going to work out, but I know that it's going to be better. I'm going through a situation right now. And even last night before I went to bed, I was just like, I'm not going to be able to do this interview like I need to because I'm so heavy. But God reminded me on my way here. I ain't no respect of personal situation. You've been through it before. You've been through something before.
Yeah.
How are you going to respond? I decide how I respond. Am I going to believe God for the thing that I don't see? Or am I going to really respond and act what's in front of me? So with that being said, that situation constantly reminds me, if you can lose everything and still get double for your trouble, like literally.
So you had your Job experience. One of the things that I wanted, because you touched on it just a little bit, and I want to just bring it out just a little bit more because you made a statement. And you were talking about it, and you pointed out in the article about how you learned what it was like to put the kids to bed and sit outside in the hallway and cry, let the tears fall, but doing it in faith, knowing that God was going to work it out. You just didn't know how he was going to work it out. And some people would look at that and they would say, well, how is that faith? How do you have faith while you still got tears running down your face?
Because, again, the Bible says, first natural, then spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally so, we have emotions. Naturally so, we are going to respond how we would naturally. If you experience trauma, if you experience heartbreak, what is your natural response? Some of us respond in anger, we overeat, we shop, we cry. All of those things, that's naturally going to happen. But even as that is happening, I know that it has to be better than this.
Yeah.
Because I know, and my mama tell me this all the time, still to this day, God is perfecting those things concerning you.
I was just about to say that.
Every time she hit me with that, I'm just like, all right, you're right.
God is perfecting those things concerning you. I
Right.
love it. I
Right.
say it over and over again because
Right.
she does say it.
She says
it's
it
so
all the
true.
time. And so,
But it's how you stand.
It's how you stand in it.
It's how you stand in it. What are some things that you do in a natural everyday? Because life is constant. And we were talking about this before the interview, before we started.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about the whirlwinds of life, and we're both in them, and we have them all the time. And your day can be a day full of whirlwind, just bam, 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 bam,
Mm-hmm.
things out of your control. How do you keep your faith in the middle of a daily whirlwind? What are some things that you do on a daily basis that increases your faith, that keeps you connected to God, that helps you deal with the whirlwinds of life?
So I listened to a podcast, and I don't remember who was on the actual podcast, but they said something that was very important, and it struck me. Many times as you go through these things, we have our feelings.
We do.
But then there's the facts. And so there comes a point to where you have to separate your feelings from your facts.
Yeah,
from the facts.
She tells me that all the time.
And so the fact of the matter is, I'm here.
Yeah.
My feelings are my feelings. And at the end of the day, I decide how I show up. So I can show up and be pissed off and take it out on everybody. But is that going to change the facts? No. The fact is I'm still right here. So I choose to show up in the relationships, whether it be professional, business, my children, my family, my friends. I choose to show up regardless to what's going on. Now, some days I can't show up fully 100%, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's life. But just having the right people and at the right time and having the right conversations. So if you and I are talking, you already know, hey, what's up? I'm not liking how you looking, and I'm like, nah, what's up? Let's talk. You'll know when to press the button so that we can keep talking, and you know when to be like, no, I'm gonna back up. So it's having the right people in your life and having those people that's gonna hold you accountable, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, and then constantly choosing to separate my feelings from the facts, because my feelings are my feelings. They can be fickle. I can like you today, and tomorrow you can be blocked. That's just the reality. And so It is what it is. But I know that about me. I know that I'm going to give concession and I'm going to talk and I'm going to talk, but at some point I'm going to draw a line. I know that about myself. But separating the feelings from the facts. And then just also I start my day. When I wake up in the morning, when I throw my legs on the side of the bed, God, I thank you. Mm-hmm. Starting with a grateful heart, even when things are not going good. And it's not always routine. Sometimes I'll get up and I'll start my day and I'll realize, well, I'm missing a part. I got to go back in and pray about this thing first. And so in that moment, I will stop and re-engineer my day and say, hey, I got to command my day different.
And then do you do devotions and different things like that?
Yes. So I do a devotion every morning where I wake up and I'll read a passage. I pray over that passage. And then I'll talk about that passage, even if it's myself or I'll call you. Or I'll call my mama.
I don't know her.
She lying. So I'll call my mom or it just may be a meditation and pray about it and then take on my day.
Let me ask you this, because I really want to, and we're wrapping up, and I want to end with how God, just showed out, because my God likes to do that. What were some of the things that you said to your children day in and day out to keep them encouraged? Because now when you're starting out, okay, mama, we in this hotel and it's fun, but after 2-3 weeks, things are beginning to change. Okay, well, I want my Jordans that I had, or all this different type of stuff, my game that's lost and all of that. What were some of the things that you said to them to keep them encouraged and keep them going during this time period?
I was very honest and transparent with them. They were old enough, my older 3 were old enough to understand it, like see it out. And I was just very transparent with them and letting them know, listen, we lost everything. And you may not get that same Jordan. You may not get that same PS4, whatever the case may be. You may not get the same TV. But at some point, we're going to get exactly what we lost, if not more. And so I think it was a learning experience for them, too, because they have been those kids, just like every other kid these days. They have all of the stuff, the games and all of the things that the kids want. And so to see all of that snatched away with no warning, no recourse, they didn't do nothing wrong, it was probably hard. But I would say to them all the time, it's going to get better, And I think they had an understanding of it, because even when I would have to go run and buy stuff, Jonathan, my oldest son, would always be like, but you're not going by yourself, So it was, and to me, I thought it was so sweet because he was still trying to pick up his life and create some level of normalcy, but at the same time, he knew what was going on, and that was exactly what I needed. He met me in a need where he didn't even know he did.
Wow.
He would be in the car asleep, and we driving all over at night trying to find things for them for school. But just to know that he was not letting me be by myself. Because in that moment, the devil tried to play on your mind and have you to feel like, well, you know what? You don't have nobody, and you don't have nothing, and da-da-da-da. So it was just those little sweet little reminders.
That kept those thoughts. Because I was going to ask you, because one of the things you talk about in the article is you felt more exhaustion than you have ever felt before. And it wasn't just physical, it was like you felt it was mental, spiritual, emotional. It was exhaustion like you had never experienced. And that's what life-changing whirlwinds do. But even in the middle of that, you kept your faith. And so I was going to ask you, what type of things help push you along and continue to strengthen that faith on those days when the enemy was talking to you, saying you ain't got nobody.
Because when you see small things that are moving, when you see small mountains that are moving, and you're like, okay, I know what vein I'm in, and I knew at that point that the worst of the worst was behind me. Even though I wasn't at the point to where everything was back normal, I was starting to see traction, And then even when it got time to close, I went from having a closing amount with a comma to a negative amount. They giving me a check.
Yes, that's what I want to talk about. So that's where we're going to end. That's where we're going to end it. How God just changed everything. He
totally blew my mind. So it was like, if you think, I got to take X amount of dollars to close it, and then, oh no, and I even called him. Like, okay, wait. I don't want no surprises. I know closing is tomorrow. Like, I noticed that in this column it says, and you told me to look for this number to make sure that I have a cashier's check for this amount. there's a negative sign there. I don't understand what that means. Can you please call me back? Like, and I was freaking out because I'm like, here's another change. And so she said, no, you don't understand. We need to know what bank we need to wire that to you. That's going to be the amount that we owe you at closing. Wait,
so they gave you money.
They gave me money.
They gave you money.
Yes. Yes. They gave me money at closing. And come to find out later, after I done closed and moved in the house, I found out that the director of sales for my builder heard about what happened when I postponed my closing, and he kicked in an additional all these dollars for my closing costs. And
Look
I
at God.
had
Look at God.
I never met the man a day in my life. Had never talked to him. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, well, can y'all give me his name so I can send him a thank you card? And, you know, but it was that. But that's the way God
works. Yes. And it's, I mean, for real, as I listen to you, I just think about Job. I think about Job so much because he gave him back everything.
And more.
And more. You started this process with, as we all do, I got my stuff and I'm good. And then you lose everything in a blink of an eye.
No.
Everything. And God gives you back. Standing in faith and believing, because Job never lost his faith. There was doubting, as you say, those the emotions that come and happen. It's the walking it out every single day. But staying faithful to God in the middle of it. Staying faithful.
I literally walk around my house every morning and I'm like, you never would have known 4 years ago I had nothing.
Because it's fully furnished.
Yeah,
fully furnished, 4-bedroom home.
And it's not a brag or it's a boast. It's a God thing, because I think all the time when I was like, I need movers, I need this. I went from needing movers to not needing no movers. I ain't have nothing to move.
Y'all pick your person up.
So I am going to only buy new appliances. I bought everything brand new from like literally, and I attribute it all to God. It ain't me. It was just how I chose to show up.
Just amazing. Just amazing. And as we close, there's just one other point that I really do want to bring out, because you mentioned this at the end of the article, and you talk about that day, and you were saying that you remember that day, and that how God worked everything out the way that He should, because your neighbor, who, by the way, who didn't make it through, it was a self-inflicted gunshot. But your neighbor was African American, and your son.
Yeah. So the blessing along the way was, we all know what it's like with racial injustice these days. So if my son had answered my phone call at the time when all of this stuff was transpiring, he would have been the first face walking from around the corner with all of those police officers lined up against that wall. He probably wouldn't be here today, because they had no way of knowing that there was an apartment over on that corner. And they're looking for an African American man who's firing shots through the front door. And my teenage son would have walked around the corner doing what he normally do, bopping down the stairs just to get groceries. So it's those small things that you don't even know.
Yeah. And
it's those prayers that my mom taught us when we were younger. Like, God is protecting us from dangers seen and unseen.
How many times did we hear that coming up?
I literally left to go to the grocery store. I didn't know, what was going to happen. But I appreciate God. And I ain't trying to turn your thing into no church. But I'm being honest. I appreciate God because He protected him when I didn't even know he needed to be protected.
Yeah. And it's those prayers that I'm telling you, our parents have always taught us growing up in church. Those prayers, you pray it now, and we talk about this now. We pray now for things that are. And God is always, grace and mercy is following us all the days of our life. But you got to believe that. You got to believe God for it and watch God do it. Dee, I thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story with us today. DeAndrea's story is just a reminder a reminder of faith in action. We hear about faith, we hear about prayers, and we hear about the power of them, but it isn't until things happen in our life that we learn to believe God for that yes. Believe him that he is going to do what it is that he said he would do. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. Being able to trust God in the middle of whatever situation you may face. Thanks. Have a good one.